Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Stickle. I'm also joined by my colleague Jim Patterson. Jim will be today's presenter and will discuss the topic of integrating OnePlan and Smartsheet for adaptive portfolio management. This webinar is a new addition to our series of adaptive webinars, so if you enjoy this video, feel free to watch the others we have available on our channel and look towards the next installment, which we'll be releasing soon. And as always, I hope that today's presentation grants you some insight into the world of project and portfolio management and gets you excited for the new developments happening within the industry and here at OnePlan. Thank you again. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thank you, Robert. Welcome, everybody. Our topic today is really about providing portfolio management capabilities and adaptive portfolio management capabilities within OnePlan and extending that capability to Smartsheet users and specifically specific use cases. So with that, let's just talk about adaptive portfolio management. You know, in this world today, organizations and different folks are using different methodologies and frameworks and approaches to managing their projects and initiatives. Agile is ever growing. People are trying to get more agile and more nimble, but waterfall is still widely used in certain types of projects where maybe agile isn't as conducive to the type of work that's being done. There's different agile variants that people are using. You know, they might be using more Kanban, more Scrum, or other variations, and they might be using some hybrid methodologies where they have a combination of hybrid agile and waterfall, or even just personalized cherry-picked versions of the things that seem to work best for them across the mix of these things. The idea there is it makes it more complex, and it leads to the use of a variety of tools out there for people in the same organization. Now, organizations, as I said, are striving to become more agile. We've been in past decades in a more traditional project and portfolio management realm on the right-hand side in the green, which tends to be more waterfall oriented and traditional governance types of methods. But in this day and age, with the digital transformation age, et cetera, people are trying to get more nimble, more agile, more responsive. And many of them strive to get all the way over to the left in that dark blue to more full agile portfolio management. And that's a goal for many, to try and become more agile. But the analysts are saying today that in reality, that journey may take years to fully get there. And they say the vast majority, over 80% of organizations, don't fully get there. They end up either through that transformation in an adaptive portfolio management state, or they stay in an adaptive portfolio management state for the long term. And that's what we're going to talk about here today, is that adaptive portfolio management realm, and how OnePlan, though it's geared towards adaptive portfolio management, can support you wherever you're at in this spectrum. Now, adaptive PPM solutions have a lot of different things. For example, you may have different methodologies, but you may have a variety of portfolios that you need to manage. There may be your project portfolios, maybe your different product portfolios. You may have an application portfolio or an IT service portfolio, program portfolio. The idea of maybe more than one than just your capital projects or corporate project portfolio needs to be managed. And adaptive portfolio management accommodates that. The idea is also to support the teams that use a variety of tools and execution methods, but provide the visibility across all of that and be able to shift investments based upon a single source of the truth, even though the execution tools that are being used may vary from project to project and from team to team. So these variations are things that adaptive PPM is meant to accommodate. On top of that, because of all these methodologies and the easy access of cloud tools today, there is proliferations of tools across organizations to where we have a lot of different tools being used for different types of projects across different parts of the organization, and it creates silos of information or pockets of information even, such that depending on the discipline, demand management, portfolio management, project management, et cetera, and the different functional areas or departments or business units within an organization, this was an example of a client of ours, where if you look at the tools that were being used in all these different disciplines, many tools were being used, and trying to pull all this data together, as you can see, Smartsheet is part of the mix, as it often is in many organizations today. The idea is, how do we get this all together and make some cohesive sense out of it all, and really deliver on cross-functional needs of the organization? So the idea is to let teams execute how they need to with the tools that make the most sense for them, and have leadership get the visibility it still needs to make decisions. In this particular case, we're looking at a variety of methodologies, some iterative, some waterfall, and some may be a mix of those. And different tools might be being used. For example, Azure DevOps might be used for agile efforts in an organization, maybe some Microsoft project or project for the web for waterfall. Smartsheet might be used for a combination of both, as it does have some Kanban style and waterfall style capabilities within it. Some people are using Jira, some people are using OnePlan natively for these things. The idea, though, in this adaptive world, organizations should be able to accommodate a scenario like this and be able to provide visibility and roll up through those initiatives through whatever structure makes sense for that organization. Maybe programs and portfolios above those programs. Perhaps there might be some strategies that these are rolling up into, or maybe different organizational units. The hierarchy can vary from organization to organization, but leadership still needs the visibility at the level and the increments that they need to see it. So the teams have the flexibility down below to do what they need to do with the tool sets that they need, including Smartsheet, and the leadership is still going to get what they need with the benefits of OnePlan. Now, analysts like Gartner say adaptive project management and reporting process flow in this, as you can see, the steps don't seem too foreign. There's a demand and there's an intake. You have to do some basic prioritization to select what you're going to do. You then source that with who's going to do it and plan for it, and then you report progress through its completion, and then do some reporting along the way. The difference is that there's multiple execution tools involved. You might involve different parts of the organization in a cross-functional way. There might be diverse execution methods, and you might even have some organizations supporting continuous delivery in more product-oriented type of spheres. But the idea here is that we want to become more agile and more adaptive so we can be more responsive, we can adapt more quickly to changing customer needs, and then we can modify and enhance our execution processes along the way in the different areas for different audiences. Now, this doesn't apply just to IT or to the PMO or the EPMO. Each organization has its own projects and initiatives that it needs to do. Whether it be the PMO, whether it be the innovation or transformation program, whether it be IT, whether it be application development or professional services or the sales and marketing organizations, or even just general operations. There's work and initiatives going on in all these, and they may have different needs. They may have different natures of projects that they're doing. The idea is adaptive project and portfolio management is designed to accommodate all this and the flexibility that's required. Now, with that proliferation of tools, if we have silos of information and pockets of information and different tools scattered all over the organization, it really breeds costly and inefficient uses of time, taking us away from the more high value things that actually deliver the things we want to deliver on and the outcomes that we're looking for. If we have pockets and silos of information, there's a lot of manual data crunching from data from multiple tools and data sources that is really a laborious effort in a lot of organizations, and then have to combine that into reports and formatting those into something that's digestible and usable pieces of information for decision support. Also, if you have silos of information, oftentimes many organizations are doing duplicate entry or re-entry of data. One, because it's got to be reported to different people, so the same data might have to go in several different places, which is not ideal. Or through that transcription of data and re-entering data, consistency and being prone to having errors in that data becomes much more likely. So also the chasing of team members for status and updates across a variety of different tools and technologies, that can be a pain. Packaging and distribution of reports to different stakeholders at organizational levels, once again, that becomes a manual process. And just trying to track completeness and timeliness of submissions is often a challenge. These things are all counterproductive to the things that we actually want to do, and we want to kind of mitigate all this. So hence we have OnePlan, and OnePlan is designed to support adaptive portfolio management and give us the power to choose. For you on here who are a Smartsheet audience today, this could very easily just be providing additional portfolio management capabilities to Smartsheet itself. And you might have nothing but Smartsheet execution plans in the organization. And some may be done more agile, some may be done more waterfall, or might have different, ways of doing work. The idea is providing that comprehensive portfolio management capability to extend what's being done at the execution level with Smartsheet. Now, in a true adaptive sense, right, Smartsheet might just be one of a number of tools that are being used for execution. In this case, Smartsheet plans, Project for the Web plans, Microsoft Project Professional, Azure DevOps plans, it could be Jira, whatever it might be. They may all be the execution tools for different plans within that portfolio, but still have them be able to feed for common visibility into the same portfolio is where OnePlan shines. So if we think about this, you could have your Smartsheet plans, your Agile plans, your waterfall plans, whatever it might be, all rolling up for portfolio level visibility, but also portfolio capabilities like true program and portfolio management, and even like analysis at that level, intake and investment approval before we even embark upon any of these initiatives, financial planning and resource capacity planning to determine, do we have the wherewithal from a dollars and from a resources and skill sets perspective to do the work that's there. These are capabilities at the portfolio level that are needed and are added and often are asked for by Smartsheet users. So if we look at the capabilities that OnePlan adds overall, these is what we bring to the table. There's intake. It could be requests or ideas that come into the mix that we have to evaluate and consider as to what we are actually going to work on and what we're going to actually allocate dollars and resources to. Then, once we decide on the things we would like to do, we have to do portfolio planning. So we have to do planning and prioritization. What things will we do first? If we have limited resources and dollars, what things might we exclude or include? Those types of things. And have visibility in a variety of different ways. Perhaps you're looking at it in a more traditional list view of a portfolio. Or in an agile sense, if you're an agile organization, you might be looking at portfolio boards and doing things like program increment planning. Or if you're more product oriented, you may look at your portfolio from a roadmap perspective, such that you're looking at when things are going to be delivered and how to actually move those things around in a way that we can actually deliver on them well. Now, the resource capacity planning, you have to figure that out. You have to say, before we have another piece of work that we take on, do we have the bandwidth to even do that? Or if we do, are there trade-offs that we have to examine? Do we have to stop doing certain things so we can do other things that are more important? That resource capacity planning is key. We also add detailed financial planning, whether it be your labor costs, whether it be your non-labor costs like materials and travel and other things like that. And even not just the cost categories themselves, but the cost types being original budgets, maybe revised forecasts as we learn more or as the project unfolds, maybe actuals on what the actual dollar spend is on these types of things, and even forecast things like revenue or benefits. That financial planning is important to a lot of organizations, especially who are doing capitalization. And what if scenario modeling? Nothing stays the same in project and portfolio management, and we're always responding to change. So how do we evaluate potential alternatives when change hits us in the face? Then we move on to execution once we decide what we're going to do. And then there's work planning that has to be done either in more of a waterfall fashion or an agile planning fashion. And OnePlan does those well within and of itself. But for you Smartsheet users out there or other users of other tools, we have connectors, productized connectors that brings in data from things like Microsoft Project or Smartsheet or Azure DevOps or Jira to feed into those work plans and have those roll up to the portfolio. So yes, they would all come into the OnePlan work plan area, but the source of the data could be Smartsheet itself. And also be able to track other work types, things like issues, risks, and change requests. The idea is to be able to track that all under one umbrella. Now, the resource managers themselves, they have to help with the resource planning and the allocation of resources to specific projects and initiatives, and maybe even go through resource negotiation process with the project managers or the project organization, who knows what they need, but maybe they don't know who they can have or who you have available that can actually do the work for them. That negotiation is a process that happens that all feeds into that resource capacity planning. And then for the team members themselves, once you're executing, team members having one place to go to status all the work that's on their plate. And this could be, as a team member, I might have a bunch of work that's assigned to me in Smartsheet plans, but there may be plans and other tools that I'm being assigned work to that could all come together into one common hub for them so they can see what's on their plate and provide status in one central place. And that's true of time reporting as well. If your need is timesheets and time reporting, that same concept exists, but with the aspect of reporting hours and time against the elements of the projects that you're working on. Now, the analysis and the outcomes, this is really where, as we're tracking, native status reports for your projects as a natural output of the process without you having to manually create these each reporting period, but yet having the flexibility to add your own narratives to it as you would into a status report. Or maybe just overall dashboards so you can report at different levels to stakeholders and executives, at the portfolio level, the program levels, down at the project level, et cetera, even down to the individual resource level. Visualizations on how all this stuff interrelates. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but dependencies and associations and what things we have to consider in order to be successful with our projects are things that are there as well. Ultimately, the goal is to have a successful outcome, whether it be a product, a service, an application, and we want to add business value and achieve benefits for our organization. Now, we're going to talk a little bit today at the end about artificial intelligence, and OnePlan does have a component called Sophia GPT, and Sophia is there to be an AI assistant for us to help us make better decisions and even help us with our planning. Now, the idea here is on the front end, we want to choose the right work and do the right work, and then ultimately we want the tools and the capabilities to do the work right and have the flexibility to use the tools we need. So if we put in the context of Smartsheet, Smartsheet has had explosive growth for individuals and teams over the years. And a lot of the driver for that is the ease of getting started, the ease of use and the flexibility. They're big drivers of adoption. But sometimes it grows a little bit organically, and sometimes it can grow like a weed and maybe inconsistently in the way that it's being used. So broader use and the broader use of this highlights gaps in some missing capabilities. For example, organizations and PMOs have trouble harnessing for portfolio level needs the various things that are being done with the variety of sheets in Smartsheet. And be able to harness that a little bit more is a desire of many organizations. Also, more advanced approaches require additional capabilities that can extend beyond existing Smartsheet use, and we're going to talk about some of those here shortly. So we're talking about enhancement of the use of Smartsheet rather than replacement, and that is often preferred because people usually have time, effort, and knowledge invested into their existing use of Smartsheet. So what can we add? Flexible portfolio visibility, whether it be portfolio hierarchies, whether it be different views, in this case, different columns of data with or without timelines. Being able to flexibly look at this, maybe look at resource utilization or financials, or look at prioritization schemes, et cetera. Being able to look at your portfolio in a variety of ways in slices and summarizations. Be able to prioritize and select, and be able to ongoingly look at things in what if scenario modeling. Say, here's our current portfolio we're anticipating doing. Do we have the resources to do that? Or are we already constrained or over allocated? Do we have the dollars and the budgets to do that? And can we evaluate alternatives and scenarios? OnePlan provides that in the mix. And overall resource capacity planning, whether it be more top-down planning that we're looking at, hey, I need Jim for a half an FTE for 3 months on this project from a top-down perspective, or from the bottom up, here's the aggregation of the roll-up of all the tasks that Jim's assigned to and the quantification of that and rolling that up to see what we're really demanding of Jim from the detail level. And that can come right from your Smartsheet tasks and the resource assignments you have in them. The financial planning and tracking, same thing. Be able to put budgets and the cost categories in there and understand what that means. Should we do all this work and what we anticipate those budgets to be, and do they fit within our target budgets? And then dashboards at all levels. We have some onboard reporting within OnePlan, but we make heavy use of Microsoft's Power BI for dashboards and reporting, and a rich data set that's just fed natively with our OData feed to give you a rich set of reporting at all levels, whether it be portfolio level or even down to the individual project and task levels. Also, we want to talk about adding Sophia GPT to the mix. All the rage now is all the talk about AI. It's a hot topic now. And for a number of months now, OnePlan has had Sophia available to you, AI as a collaborator. And it's a revolutionary new language model for all portfolio and work management capabilities. We leverage Microsoft's Azure OpenAI as opposed to the general open AI on the general internet that ChatGPT in general uses. So it has all the protections and boundaries that the Microsoft Cloud offers you. OnePlan can understand natural language and respond in real time, and it can also streamline your planning and decision-making processes. So it not only has learned from OpenAI's large network of data sources, but it's also learned about from our documentation, from our tool sets about OnePlan itself, and it will actually leverage in context the data we present to it within OnePlan to make analysis and give suggestions for you for things like data entry, information retrieval, and decision-making. Now, these integrations that we talk about with these other tools, we're not talking about coding one-off integrations for you. We have productized connectors that connect OnePlan to these other tools. If you look down in the work management node, Smartsheet is one of those things, along with Microsoft Project and Planner, etc. And in the software development or agile tools, we got Azure DevOps and Jira, etc. We also connect to things like financial systems or service management systems or CRM systems, for example. That might be the intake in a services organization. But the idea is that these are ready to go and just need to be configured for you. So with that, let's go into a demonstration of OnePlan itself. So let's just start at the idea of an adaptive portfolio. OnePlan has the ability to be used in a browser, or it can be surfaced within Microsoft Teams, for example, because it's an authorized Microsoft Teams app, and a variety of other ways. But in all cases, there's a navigation on the left-hand side here that gets you to the broader set of capabilities that are available to you. In this case, we're in My Portfolio, which gives me access to the portfolio items and the portfolios that I've been given access to or have permissions to. In here, we have the notion of a thing called plan types. And the plan types allow you to define a hierarchy. So in here, we have a sample one that we have a portfolio level, and then we have programs within the portfolios, and then we have projects, which denote primarily waterfall projects. In this case, epics, which denote more agile efforts. But this hierarchy can be whatever it is that your organization needs to be. It could be more organization oriented. It could be more work type oriented. The idea is it's flexible. This is just an example of one hierarchy. But as we look at this primary hierarchy and we expand it out in here, notice the portfolios. We have programs within those portfolios. And then let's just look at the first program in portfolio. I now have a bunch of projects and epics or initiatives in here that are rolling up into these primary areas in the hierarchy. Now, another key thing to note here is on the left-hand side, you'll see a bunch of icons, and those icons indicate that there is a connection with some other tool to bring data in or to collaborate with OnePlan to get the adaptive net effect that you're looking for portfolio management. Notice here I've got Microsoft Planner, I've got Azure DevOps, I've got Smartsheet, I've got Jira, I've got Project for the Web, I got Microsoft Project Professional. And I have some here that are actually just connected to Teams for collaboration and content like documents, but there's no scheduling tool tied to them. That means that they're managing the schedules of the work items right in OnePlan itself. So here within the same portfolio, we have a mixture of a variety of different sources for that execution data all coming into one portfolio. Now, right now I'm in what we call list views. In this list view, I'm in a portfolio summary view that's basically showing me a certain set of columns of data. It's very KPI oriented, red, yellow, green. These can be manually set or formula driven to automatically change based on your criteria. But the idea here in these list views, you can have a variety of other views. For example, I could potentially strip out the hierarchy in that plan type hierarchy and look at this in more of a flat portfolio view, right? They're still tied to that hierarchy, but now I'm just looking at a list of projects and epics that are available to me. And this gives me the ability, if I put metadata against these projects, to categorize them in certain ways that I'm not locked into this hierarchy for the ways I would see this. For example, I might decide I want to see this portfolio by different business units instead of portfolios. In this case now, I've got, say, the capital planning area has got 3 projects going on within capital planning. And I can filter and just show those things by the same business units and the same criteria in here as well. I could also look at these list views by, let's just say, goals. So maybe I have certain goals that are aligned with certain projects. And now I want to see the grow the business goal. And I've got 9 projects in Epics or just projects available here in the grow the business area. Or I might want to look at who's responsible for these. And I could look at things like executive sponsors or maybe who the manager is. And as I go through there, I could expand this out and I could see, for example, Austin Abrams projects and Bertram's projects and Chris's projects and look at them in that regard as well. So we have flexible ways that we can look at these list views. And that even includes things like prioritization views and schedule views. So for example, if I have a schedule summary view, I might just be focused on how we're doing from a schedule perspective. And I can start looking at those things and I can say, all right, how are we, what are the timelines? What are some of the key milestones and those types of things that we're looking at from that schedule perspective? And what's the KPI on schedule? I might be looking at prioritization. And as I come down here and I go to our prioritization views, look at how we've prioritized this based on our prioritization mechanism. For example, this one's showing a more strategic or business driver approach on how well it strategically aligns and basically determining how well or how strongly it aligns with that. Is this going to lower cost? Is it going to do other things in that regard? And I look at it from high to low or low to high on the prioritization score. And what we change in here is going to drive a calculated score over here. And this can be whatever scoring mechanism that you would like it to be. We can even do things on the list views on things like trending. We do snapshot data. So you have certain things that you want to trend on, whether things are getting better or worse, or if they're trending good or bad. You can have a trending view that'll actually show you those things. For example, on the red, yellow, green, are we moving more towards green? Or are we moving more towards red? As the budget, are we doing better on budget? Or are we doing worse, for example? Those types of things are available to us within these dashboard views or within these portfolio views. We also have board views, and these board views for the more agile folks are very flexible. In this particular case, I'm looking at this board by state. So is it proposed, active, closed, or on hold? They're color coded by the health or the status of those. Are they at risk or are they on track, for example? And I could look at these in a variety of different ways. I could say, you know, let me look at this board by, let's just say by strategy. And if I look at it by strategy, I can see the different strategies in the organization. I can see which cards are there. I could drill in any time to look at the detailed data around any of these cards and basically come in here and see, why is this thing yellow? And maybe get an assessment from the details that are in here of why this thing is yellow and why this thing might be at risk. We also have the ability to do things with swim lanes. So if I do strategic alignment by goals, for example, I could come in here and see the columns on how well it strategically aligns, and then I can show the individual goals here. In this case, I got customer satisfaction, I got grow the business, I've got swim lanes for these things and show these in different ways, as well as the dependencies that may exist between these and things I have to factor in that regard. There's also the roadmap views, and this is, as I talked about in the slides, the ability to look at this more from a program management perspective. In this case, I've got my quarterly or program increments, and here's the deliveries that we're expecting over certain periods of time. This case, I'm looking at this roadmap grouped by the business units, but I could also look at this, say, grouped by the goals. And those same goals, I could look at what the deliveries are for those different goals over time, as well as I could look at, say, maybe by strategy as well. And the dashboard capability really gets us into the reporting. If I look at what we're doing with Power BI, we have a native feed to a report pack that has 40 some odd report variations for you to start with, but you can modify those, you can add to them of your own mix, but all the data that's in OnePlan is available for these reports. So for example, trending reports, portfolio level dashboards, etc., being able to drill into these reports and saying, okay, here's all these different portfolios. Let me drill into one portfolio in particular. And as I drill through into that portfolio, I can see that there is a singular program within this portfolio. And if I drill into that program, for example, I can go down and then see all the projects in Epics within this particular program, look at an overview, say, dashboard. I could look at maybe, say, a status dashboard and how we're doing with the KPIs that mirror what's in the views within OnePlan itself. Maybe more financial focused data, for example, we could look at. And maybe we could look at more execution details on what we're delivering. what we've completed as far as milestones, what's upcoming, what's overdue, what issues and risks are we dealing with, etc. So all different types of reports, as you can see from the tabs down below here. If I go back to the list view, and as we look at this, and we want to drill into, and by the way, here's a great portfolio view of compliance, letting me know on each project how we're doing from a governance perspective, how we're doing on late tasks and issues and risks and other things like that we have. So we have some things as far as compliance scores based upon criteria. We could also just look at this once again from our portfolio summary again. And as we bring that up and expand this out, let's take a look at this data warehouse migration. Now, this one is not connected to anything, but it will show us some core capabilities of OnePlan at first. So as I drill into this, one of the things we can do, I talked about data and metadata. Well, these detail pages are configurable for each customer. Now, we have templates to get started with, but you can set up, for example, what your life cycle or your stages or your phases or your gates are. You can actually have different sections and fields of data available to you in this form. And some of them may only appear at your choice, maybe when you reach certain stages of the life cycle of the project. But here we've categorized things by like business unit and by manager and by, executive sponsor and goals, etc. We have narrative that maybe came over from the request in the first place with the business case data that we might want to look at, right? We have, project prioritization method and how we arrived at this score by the gradations we had on things like risk reduction and strategic alignment. We have the project schedule that at the high level, the financials and how we're tracking on that, and even the KPIs and other current narrative status that we have around that project. Once again, this is completely configurable by you. Now, if I go to the work plan where the details are on the schedule and the execution that we're going to do, this one here has, just like we have plan types up at the portfolio level, we have the concept of work types down here. If I expand this out, you'll notice in this schedule work type, I've got a waterfall plan that's available to me here. And this waterfall plan could have been built right here from scratch. It could have been built from a template library that we would have to maintain standards. We can show this schedule with and without Gantt chart representations and dependencies and all that like we would think, and even have different views in here that would show different perspectives, like maybe a more effort-oriented or more cost-oriented view. This one's a little bit more about the schedule and status in this view as we look through it. But we also have the concept in here of backlog work types for more agile planning. And as we go through here, we may want to put things in here like user stories and features and tasks around that. We might even want to put in things like we might want to even do sprint planning in here to maybe look at the sprints, et cetera. They're coming in, what elements are associated with which sprints. We might even have things like issues and risks and change logs in here and assign people to those just like we would to work tasks and capture the appropriate data around those elements. The idea here is we have flexible work planning and we can do all those things right within the work plan without having to go to different tool sets or different places to make that happen. Now, if I go back to the schedule work type here, what I want to show at this point is that yes, this plan in particular was built using OnePlan and a template in OnePlan, but as you start a plan, you could choose whatever connectors you choose to enable for OnePlan. I could have gotten my data from Smartsheet, could have got it from Microsoft's Project for the Web or Planner or their Microsoft Project Professional. Once again, that's what's been enabled in this particular OnePlan environment. Now we'll show you in a little bit a plan that was actually linked to Smartsheet. Now, ultimately, we have a resource plan in here that allows us to do resource capacity planning for this project. So for example, here, I can see a resource plan. I can plan in terms of hours or percentages of allocation or FTEs. And I can see here, for example, that even though on this particular project, Ben Feldman is about 43% allocated or 48% allocated here, he's showing over allocated here overall because the system knows he's got other allocations that have him over allocated in addition to this as we go through. So as we go through that, we can, look there and we can see where the over allocations are. And we can potentially come in here and find substitutions to find other things that other people to maybe replace an over allocated Ben. We have the concept of candidates and replacements, such that as I look for like a best match, I can see, for example, that maybe Sophia King has enough remaining availability to maybe take on this project from Ben, and maybe he wouldn't be over allocated in this period. We also have the ability, now this is more of a top-down plan. It's not task-based. It allows you to do top-down resource capacity planning, but we can also look at this from the bottom up. This scheduled resource plan really allows me to come from the bottom up and look at Bertram. And I can see that Bertram is now on this particular project. He's on all these tasks in this project, and the resource assignments on those tasks are rolling up from the bottom up to give me a view of what his scheduled allocation is based upon the tactical plans that have been put in place. Now, if I go back here and I looked at the committed, and I could see what the assumptions were about how we were going to use him, and I went in to say, do a comparison, and I could say my original assumption was I was going to need him in a certain fashion, but now I got a detailed schedule in place, and that detailed schedule now tells me that he's going to be used in a variety of different ways. So if I look at Bertram, we thought we were going to need him maybe only 3% of his time in August, and now we're going to need him 23% of his time in August based upon the tasks that are in there. So once again, we can evolve this and get better and more complete information as we go forward. On the financial side, we can actually roll the resource plan data into roll-ups of labor costs by using the resource plan data and the rates associated with those resources. But we can also track other categories that are non-labor, like materials and supplies, travel and expenses, contract labor, software, etc., and actually do that, and also track things like budget, forecast, actuals, and benefits, etc. Once again, detailed financial tracking that all rolls up to a portfolio level. I guess the other piece within the specific project and the reporting, I talked about native status reports. Be able to have this report generated automatically each reporting period. Allow me to put my narrative in specific for this period in rich text format, and then even pull in things like things that we're working on and active issues automatically into the report, and then be able to submit this report each period allows us to keep a history of all the different data and snapshots of that. We can point people to this report here if they're OnePlan users, or we can put these reports out to PDF, Word, or send it out in the body of an email. Once again, reducing that manual effort that you might have to do ordinarily. The other things here in the project level is we also have, say insights that give us clues into this project of things that might require our attention. Like we have some tasks that have no resources assigned. We have tasks that are off track. We have some active issues. We have some unsubmitted status reports. There's actually OnePlan Power BI reports at the project level. So we looked at the portfolio level before, but now we could maybe looking at just data specific to this project only and look at project specific dashboards and reports. The other piece here is this whole concept of visualization. I kind of hinted at this a little bit in the slides. And here I could take a look at this data warehouse migration. It has some things that actually have to happen as predecessors before we can do this. And we have something down the road, a successor that's dependent on us. And we'll talk a little bit more how we get to this, but the idea here is that this project is supporting different strategies in the organization, and it also is associated with certain products and applications, etc. And we can see that there are some things that we need to consider as we embark upon this project. Now, if I go back to the portfolio level and I go look at this list view, let me drill into a Smartsheet project. So for example here, if I drill in, and by the way, I don't have to drill in generally, I can drill into this project from the left here and say, just take me to the work plan. And as it takes me to the work plan for this Smartsheet project, you'll see in the schedule here, I've got a work plan in here that's in OnePlan format. But what's different here this time is that it's actually connected to a Smartsheet plan. And so this connection here basically is telling me that this data in OnePlan is being derived from this Smartsheet plan. Now, if I have access to Smartsheet, I can go to it. Oops, excuse me. And it'll take me to the Smartsheet plan that was the source of this. The key here is that if you're a Smartsheet user, this is designed so that you can continue to do what you're doing in Smartsheet. You can build your plans in here like you normally do, but the net result of what you put in here, the resource assignments, the dates, the tasks, the work breakdown structure, etc., when we synchronize this, and by the way, there's an auto synchronization that allows you to schedule this frequently, such that you don't have to remember to synchronize it at all. Ultimately, this data is going to come back over into OnePlan, and it's going to be in here. Now, you could not wait for that synchronization. You could choose to do a manual sync and just say, I'd like to import that data from Smartsheet now, or maybe I have some changes here I'd like to export if you do this bidirectionally. And the idea is it's ultimately going to end up here in OnePlan. It's going to end up there in a fashion that's going to allow you to have this data all roll up into the portfolio, all coming from Smartsheet. Now, just to further this adaptive message in here, notice these other things. People are using other things, very popularly, things like Project Professional. The same concept applies for people using Microsoft Project. And the idea here is that this particular plan has a work plan in OnePlan that's being derived from the source of a Microsoft Project plan by somebody who, say, preferred to use Microsoft Project. So once again, the Smartsheet plans can coexist with these Microsoft Project plans, all coming together within one common hub within OnePlan. And we have other examples. I think you get the point. Azure DevOps and Jira and Planner and all those things, we have connectors for those as well. Now, if you go upstream a little bit, the whole concept of intake and having a funnel of ideas or requests, OnePlan has that notion in here as well. So for example, if I go to an ideas area, and you can give anybody in the organization access to this with our requests app. And the idea here is that you can decide what you want to capture as you evaluate and prioritize these things. I'm looking at a prioritization view that I have here with similar mechanisms that are helping drive prioritization scores. And in here, if I say drill into this, let's just say DevOps implementation one, I've got business case narrative. I've got metadata in here but the ways I'd like to categorize this. You can have a stage or phase gate for these for approval cycles. And even things like choose your prioritization method, maybe a more business driver method, or maybe more of an agile weighted shortest job first or WSJF approach. And even capture things like financials and other things that you might want to do for consideration of this. The key here is that even these might have dependencies that you might want to call out. These associations in here, you might want to associate this and say there's something that has to happen before we do this. This agile development has to happen before the DevOps implementation. And it may be associated with some strategies that we're supporting. So it might be important that we decide to do this as we're considering alternatives of what we do and what we don't do. The key there is I go back to this, and once I approve this, either through workflow or through having somebody with the approval here in OnePlan to do it, we can do what's called a reorganize that allows us to convert this idea into, say, a project or an epic and promote this without having to rekey it or come from another system. The idea is that it's one continuum from the initial idea, the request, the approval, and then promoting it into a project and move it into that active project portfolio. So that capability all exists right here within OnePlan. Now, we talked about resource plans in the context of an individual project, but when it all comes together in a central global resource plan. So when you think about you're putting resource plans together for each of your individual projects, it's going to end up aggregating in here. So for example, that committed top-down plan, as I look at this and I come into something like this, notice that I can look at this in a variety of ways. I'm looking at this by different roles. And let's say, for example, I wanted to look at the engineering role. I can see here, the resources in engineering, including generic engineering allocations that we haven't put a name to yet, and see that the total hours go well beyond what we have. So for example, let me just switch this over to an FTE view, full-time equivalent, and I can see here that my plan right now says I need over 10 engineers when I only have a capacity of 8 within the month of July. So I am over allocated within that concept as I go through there. If I come through here into the business analyst roles, and I look at, say, Gavin Belston, I can see he's over allocated based upon all the things he's on. What if I decided that I wanted to find an alternative to try to relieve him of that? Now that whole replace resource thing happens here as well. So for example, if I tried to replace him on the, say, product launch, right? And I looked for candidates as alternatives, as best matches for him, I can see once again here that Sophia King might be an alternative to say, let me replace him with Sophia King on this and relieve some of his overburden because she has remaining capacity that could absorb it. Now, that bottom-up plan that we talked about before, rolling up from the individual schedules and the individual work items in here, that's still available to us here at the overall, global level as well. So for example, if I go into the engineer area and I can see that Daniel Williams is over allocated, this bottom up is really him being over allocated based upon these different projects. And I can even look at this Smartsheet project that I showed you the connection to, and I can see the allocations he has all in September are contributing to his September allocation, but he has allocations from other projects that are driving over allocations in, say, February and March. So once again, this bottoms up approach can pull from all your variety of plans, including the Smartsheet plans, bringing them into the mix here. We also have, and we'll talk in a second, a concept of a timesheet here. And you can even view what's been charged in timesheets across the board. I don't have a lot of data in here on timesheets right now, but I can see that Daniel Williams has charged some time to all these different projects in his timesheet to date. Now, another key advanced piece is, as we look at these portfolio level capabilities, is what we call the modeler. And this modeler allows us to do what-if analysis without really changing the production data or the current data sets within our project plans. Let's just say I selected a mix of projects that I wanted to put into a model or a what-if scenario. And I'm going to go into this IT 23 project planning. So here, I've got 35 candidate projects, some of them active, some of them proposed, some of them are on hold. They each have prioritization scores associated with them, etc. Now in this mix, I could have different scenarios. In this case, I'm not going to do this from scratch given the time we have, but the idea is, let's just say our assumption was we'd have a $10 million budget. Well, through the combination of selecting and deselecting projects, out of those 35 projects, I can do 22 of them, it looks like, and it looks like these projects would be out in the above the line, below the line type of analysis that we have. Now, what do we have there? Well, it might be, if we look at the financial implications of this scenario, we can see here that I've got a $10 million budget for the year, but even now I'm slightly over that at about 10.3, but I'm close to the $10 million budget here. Now there's certain things I could do. I could deselect another project, or maybe I feel the projects I've selected I've got to do somehow, some way. I might want to interject a timeline onto this, right? And as I interject a timeline onto this, maybe I'll go down to maybe the lowest priority project that has been still selected and say, maybe the answer to this is that we have to do it, but maybe we have to defer it out a ways such that it takes this budget and it drops us down just about to the $10 million level. So it gave us some relief, and then we have the same mix of projects. We're just changing the staging on that. And we can save an updated scenario or a brand new scenario to do that mix. Same thing holds true with the resources. I can look at the resource implications of this and see if we have the resource wherewithal to do this. So for example, in this particular case, if I deselected a project like this social media strategy, I can see I have a lot more green here and much less red if I do this mix of projects based on the resources below. Now, alternately, I can consider alternatives. For example, let me look at a $12 million budget. And I can say, what if I got, some more money? And I look at this from an analysis perspective. I can now compare these things and see Yes, I could do 22 projects here, but if I got $2 million more, I could do actually 6 more projects. And even better, I can achieve maybe $11 million more in benefit if I could just get $2 million more of investment. The key is we can go through these scenarios iteratively to come up with the right solution as we see fit. Now in here, I can do details and compare different scenarios as far as what's in and what's out between the 10 and the $12 million, and compare these two and look at what's in, what's out, and what the priorities are under these different scenarios. I can even look at it graphically from a dashboard perspective, looking at the same types of things. I can even do your traditional bubble charts in here. So for example, as I look at the selections of what's in and what's out, I can do a bubble chart view. In this case, I'm looking at prioritization score versus benefits. Now, high prioritization, high benefits would probably be up in this realm. And it looks like I only have a couple projects out in this area, right? But the high benefit area, I got a lot of stuff, but they have lower budgets here, and even have some that have large budgets here and benefits. But the idea is I'm looking at a combination of what's been selected and even showing what's been not selected, so I can see, are we overlooking things that should be considered based upon their prioritization and the benefits to the organization. So once again, some great capabilities in the what if scenario modeling. Now, from a team member perspective, the things that we showed, all team members and all users get an insights or a homepage that gives them insights on things that require their attention, conversations that they're involved in, and even direct access to the plans that they're members of, so they don't have to go through an entire portfolio. So once again, that's helpful. I mentioned the hub where they can go in a My Work area, and depending on all the projects that they're on, they could actually status everything in one place, including things on the projects they're on, including, for example, the IT Smartsheet project and the Smartsheet test. They could status those up here, and those updates can go back to Smartsheet. But some of these projects might be managed in a different tool. It could happen. The other part of this is that the timesheet that's available to us allows us to charge time cohesively in conjunction with the work that we're planning and executing. So in this particular case, I've got a timesheet. I've got the different elements that I have this period on my timesheet. I can actually charge the time. I can put notes of explanation. I can categorize it and have different fields of data in here. We have approvals by resource manager and project managers, or other approval flows that you might want, and be able to approve this time and get that data back into our projects for either billing, capitalization, chargeback, whatever it might be. Now, I'll just say from a component perspective, we're talking about adaptive today, which is really about mixed methodology, mixed portfolios, and mixed tools, right? But OnePlan's strength, and we've done other webinars on this, where the strategy piece allows us to do objectives and key results and other strategies to align our projects with. And I showed you some of that in the visualizer. The idea is that this capability exists here within the tool set, and we could very easily visualize, for example, what a strategy is aligned with by using that visualization tool. And I'll look at this launch a successful new product line. I have no predecessors, but you can see I'm associated with a lot of different projects and epics and different products and applications, etc. That could be a key growth step beyond even adaptive, right? And on the enterprise architecture, I did put a slide up talking about that you might have multiple portfolios that an adaptive world might manage. In this particular case, if I look at this enterprise architecture by type, I may have a product portfolio. I might have a business capabilities portfolio. I might have an application portfolio, all with different details within them as we look at them and see what we're capturing regarding information regarding these different applications and other things. So the idea is where that's coming from. I just didn't want that to be a mystery to you, to understand that these things can be leveraged right within OnePlan itself. And I guess I'll finish before I wrap up. I think I'll go just give an example here, because you could go all day on this, but I did mention Sophia GPT as our AI assistant. And let's just say I'm in a bunch of ideas that I'm looking at, and I've got prioritization done on those, and I've kind of assessed what the budget is and maybe what the benefits are, etc. And let me go and I can ask, it gives us some examples in each of the areas in context of where we're at in OnePlan. But let me ask it a question. Let me ask it, based on prioritization score and ROI, what 3 projects should we approve first and why? So let me just ask it, see what it comes up with based upon the data that's here in OnePlan and its knowledge from Azure OpenAI. So it'll take a moment to think about this because I asked it to look at a number of different dimensions, but it's going to give me some suggestions, I would imagine. I think the time it took is based on the why question that I gave it, because here it's saying disaster recovery has a high prioritization score, a high return on investment, and then it's giving me an explanation as to why. So basically it says it gives me a detailed explanation about why it made that choice in addition to just the metrics. So the idea here is, out of a complex set of things that I'm considering, I have an assistant here to maybe weigh in on a multiple dimension analysis that I might not have made all those dimensions part of my human assertion of that. So anyway, here we have 3 projects, and basically here it's saying, though it has a lower prioritization score, it has the aims to improve the company's products by integrating voice assistant technology, which could be game changing. So the idea there is we're getting a lot of information here regarding Sophia. All right, with that, I think I will go back and let's just talk about summary and next steps. The gist of our presentation today was about adaptive PPM. And it's about teams choose how they work and leadership gets the visibility and the metrics they require. It keeps users working their preferred tools and solutions appropriate for their role, maturity, and type of work. And that includes Smartsheet. OnePlan adds full adaptive PPM capabilities to Smartsheet users or for Smartsheet users. OnePlan provides a pre-built connector for Smartsheet, so this thing is available and ready to go. It also improves adoption by minimizing duplication of effort. If we're synchronizing this data, we're not having to do it in our Smartsheet and then report it up somewhere else to portfolio management or the PMO or to leadership. It all comes from one place. And it is modern user experience and this, better participation and compliance from the ease of use and less places to go for this data. It'll integrate all this into one common hub of work and resources. And then Sophia GPT, our AI assistant, will give you analysis and help you make decisions and even help you in the planning formulation process. OnePlan is recognized as a leader in portfolio management, as a thought leader in our tool sets. We're built on the Microsoft platform and we're recognized by them as well as by analysts like Gartner and Infotech and Forrester. We give webinars like this all the time. Our next webinar is coming up. If you go to oneplan.ai/webinars, there's 3 upcoming ones. There's also a library of recorded on-demand webinars you can look at, and you can register for them here. On September 28th, we're talking about Tales from Implementation, OnePlan providing Microsoft PPM and the effective PMO, and some lessons learned there on what it takes to do that. We're also going to do one industry specific on biotech pharma, program management across functional teams. And then after that, we're going to do unified resource capacity planning using OnePlan. So once again, check us out. We do these almost weekly. Now, if you want to trial OnePlan, you can do that. Go to oneplan.ai/solutions or go to Microsoft App Source. And today we showed you adaptive project and portfolio management. But if you're interested in the strategy and the enterprise architecture pieces, the strategic portfolio management trial is there. But reach out to us. We're happy to chaperone you and guide you and make sure you get the most out of your trial. We also offer a free roadmap workshop. If you're not ready to trial this, but you want to understand what it takes to get into a solution like this and how to make this work with your use of Smartsheet, let's have a session. Let's talk about what that's going to take, and we'll give you an idea what that roadmap looks like and what's all involved. So a free trial, roadmap workshop, even if you're not there, if you want to see more than this generalized demo we gave you today, reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai, and we're happy to schedule a personalized demo that addresses your pain points and your requirements. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today. At OnePlan, we bring things into one hub and we call it the power of one. My email address will be in the slides. You'll get a copy of this if you want to reach out to me directly, and our general email is there for contact. So once again, thank you. We provide one interface, one experience, one hub, all in OnePlan. And today, we're bringing it all together for Smartsheet. Have a great day.